Real estate investment practice problem using Excel. Adjustable rate mortgage or ARM with a rate cap, part number 2. Get ready because we're raising the stakes with real estate. Here we are in our Excel worksheet. If you have access to the Excel worksheet, would like to follow along, note that we have 3 tabs on down below: example, practice, and blank. Let's take a look at them now, starting with the example tab, in essence being an answer key. In prior presentations, we took a look at the fixed rate loan, the standard loan that we could be comparing and contrasting to as we move forward to the ARM, then constructed our amortization table, or at least analyzed it. Then we're using that to compare and contrast against the adjustable rate loan, or the ARM. We had started to construct this being a little bit different than the prior practice problem in that we added the annual cap and the lifetime cap. So that's going to be the new types of information. We started to construct our table, including the index, remembering that the index, if you're starting out on the loan, you don't know what's going to happen in the future. The index being a gauge of, in essence, what's going on in the economy. Then we're going to have our margin, which was 2% from the index, which is going to be calculated here if there were no restrictions. And then we added the restrictions of the annual cap, lifetime cap, first doing it intuitively and then doing it with complex formulas in terms of if-then type of formulas, logic arguments. Now we're going to be moving on to the payments, calculating the payments, which will be recalculated as the rates adjust on a yearly basis. And to do that, we will need the ending balances after each period, which we can construct 2 different ways. One, we can actually construct the amortization table and build it out as we go. And 2, we can use formulas for these ending balances. We're going to start first by creating the amortization table, because that way we get a good idea of a double check on the amortization table and kind of what the amortization table is doing, having a larger understanding or comprehension of what's going on throughout the loan as these changes take place. That's where we'll stop this time. So we're going to go to the practice tab here. That has pre-formatted cells, so if you're working through the practice problem and want to do a little less formatting, you can use that tab. We're in the blank tab, where we started off with one little scratch, and while we're creating the Grand Canyon of information here, piling it in information into the Grand Canyon, which was just a scratch at the beginning. So we're going to have, this is our information on the left, that's our fixed rate one, and then this is what we have constructed thus far. So we have the index, we have the rate if there was no caps, and then the rate with the caps. Now we're going to be calculating our payment. Now it's a little bit different on the calculation of the payment, because we're going to try to have something that we can copy down. In essence, it's the same. It's mainly in that number area that we kind of switch things up a little bit. So I'm going to say negative instead of equal, so I end up with a positive number. Actually, first, let's put the balance. I'm going to put my balance over here, because I like to be able to format it in the cell and be able to copy it down easily. So then we're going to go to the payment, and I'm going to say negative PMT, our standard starting point for the payment. We're picking up the rate, which is going to be that rate. That's still a yearly rate, so we got to divide it by 12 to get the monthly rate. Nothing too unusual there. Then comma, number of periods. This is where the new stuff happens. I'm going to say bracket, and we're going to first think about it in years, which is going to be the 30 years. Because we're picking up the years outside of our date or table over here, we want to make that absolute with an F4 on the keyboard, $ before the L and 5. And then we're going to say minus, I'm going to pick up the item to the left, the 1, which I do want it to copy down. And then I'm going to say plus 1. Now that seems kind of funny. Why would you do that 30? Because we know we're 30 years out. Why wouldn't I just use the 30 here? Because we're trying to make it so when I copy this thing down, it will go to 29 next time. So if I do this and I copy it down, it'll take 30 minus 2 plus 1, which will be 29, and we'll be able to copy it down. Now that's in years though, and we need it in months. So I'm going to take that and multiply it times 12 to get the months. And then we can go to the final argument, comma, and that's going to be the present value, which is the balance, which I'm going to have to put my cursor down and scroll on up there. It's in S2 right there, 2 S's, S2. And there we have it. We're going to say enter. It's going to close up the brackets for us. That's okay. Let's add some pennies to make it a little bit more exact. I'm going to select this whole column, number group, adding some pennies. There we have it. Now we should be able to copy that down. I'm going to copy it down and then recalculate it a couple times just to practice this calculation. So we're going to, if I was to copy it down, now it's not going to come out perfectly because the balances are not over here, but we can kind of double check and see if it's doing what we would expect it to do. And then next, I'm going to create the next balance. Now, if I was to construct these balances over here, then this next calculation will populate once I have the proper ending balance. So I can still copy it down that way and then get the ending balances. The ending balances I can get with a formula, or I can construct the amortization table as we go. I'm going to construct the table because I think that gives us an idea of what's happening on a step-by-step basis. So we'll do this over. I'm going to copy this amortization table, and then we'll just adjust it. So here's our standard 30-year fixed rate. Let's just select that whole, all these columns from C to I, C, CI, and then Control C, and paste that on over here somewhere in column U, because I copied that skinny row or column. So I'm going to paste it, and it gives me that skinny column, so we still have that space between our data. And then we got to change a couple things to the payment item here. That payment item, that is absolutized, so I need to make it different because now the payment is our new payment, which we just calculated at the 952.32. Going to make that absolute. F4 on the keyboard, $ before the R and the 3, enter. Putting our cursor back on it, we're going to double click on Phil's handle, the Phil handle. Double click. Phil constructed that handle himself. Took a lot of work and effort. I don't know what I'm talking about. In any case, here we go. Now we're going to double click on the interest. This rate needs to change. That needs to change. So we're going to change it. Things need to change around here. So we're going to say that's going to be times 11%. And then F4 on the keyboard. Enter. And something funny. And then we need the beginning balance up top. Beginning balance is going to be equal to the 100,000. So there we have it. And then I'm going to put my cursor back on this one, double click on it, and that should do it. Now let's double check, go into the bottom of this thing, see if it gets to 0, because that's usually a pretty good double check. We're like, yeah, that looks like it's doing what we're supposed to be doing. So let's go back up, and now I'm gonna differentiate year 2 from year 1 because we're gonna update this thing on the rate each year. So let's kind of select year 2 here. And then make our banded thing. It's a banded, not like a bad thing, not like a bandit, like with a mask, but a banded with like different bands of color. So there we have it. Then what we're going to do is say that looks good. Now the ending balance here, that 99,550 should be the ending balance right here. So now I could pull that over. This is one way we can pull it over and kind of construct as we go. Once we do that, once I hit enter, this one will calculate automatically. There it did it. And so that copying it down worked. But I still want to recalculate the payment because I want to practice. Practice is the key here. That's what we're here for. We're here for practice. So let's try to calculate this payment again. We're going to say this is negative PMT, shift 9, rate 12%. And then I'm going to say then divided by 12 to get the monthly rate, comma, number of periods. This is where the new stuff happens. Brackets. We're doing it in years first, which is going to be 30 over here. That's outside of our data set. So I want to say F4 on the keyboard, making an absolute $ before the L and the 5. Then we're going to subtract out 2. I want to pull the 2 from our years over here because I want to copy that down, but I really don't want to subtract 2. I only want to subtract 1. So I'm going to then say plus 1. So it's going to be 30 minus 2 plus 1, or 29. That's what we wanted. And then we're going to say times 12 to get to the months instead of years. And then finally, comma, we want that prior balance, which you can't see. It should be up right there. And that's going to be in S3. So then we say enter, and it closes up the brackets for us. So that's good. We can then copy that down. We're not going to get any new numbers. We could double check and say, looks like it's doing what we want. Let's add the next ending balance and see if it calculates what we think it should by looking at the amortization table. So now I'm going to go down here. We got the banded on 2, and then 3, let's unband, and then 4, let's put a band on 3. On 4. 4 needs a band. Green band on 4. It's a bandit. It's been banded. It's banded. It's an outlaw. It's banded. It's a bandit. Okay. So then we're going to have our new calculation on year 2, or a new payment structure. So this cell needs to change. That needs to be 102771. I'm going to say F4 on the keyboard because I want to copy that down. F4, keyboard. Putting our cursor back on that, grabbing Phil's handle, and then dragging that down, Phil needs to sandpaper off the handle. I got a splinter last time, so be careful. You might want to wear gloves. So we're going to then say, the next one, if I double click on the interest here, we're going to then say that this is going to be the new rate, which is going to be, delete that one and say it's 12% now. F4 on the keyboard, F4 on the keyboard, enter, putting the gloves on so we can grab Phil's handle, not get any splinters or anything, or any calluses or like blisters. And then we're going to get a firm grip and then drag it down right there. So there we have it. And now let's bring it all the way down so we can see what happens to the end of this process, which should bring us back down to 0. Because if this is where we were at this point in time, we wouldn't know what was going to happen in the future. And we could just pull this all the way down. You can kind of see our double check. I'm just going to double click on both of these all the way down. And then we should get back to 0 at the end. I know I've greenified the cells, which is kind of disturbing. But if we go all the way down, it brings us back to 0. So that gives us kind of that double check. That's why the amortization table is kind of nice to work with. Then we have that ending balance, which I could say this equals the ending balance at the end of year 2, which is that 99,141. And once we enter that, then the next one has been populated automatically. Automatically. And so, but I want to recalculate it again for practicing sake. So let's delete it and let's calculate it again. Negative PMT shift 9 rate 14% divided by 12 to get the monthly rate, comma, brackets for the period. First thinking about it in years, which is going to be the 30 years. That's outside of our data or table. Therefore, I want to make it absolute so I can copy it down, $ before the L and the 5, minus 3 on the left-hand side. But then I'm going to say plus 1 because I really want, 30 minus 2. But I want something that can copy down, bracketize it, multiply it times 12 to get to the months instead of years, comma, and then we want the prior balance, or the balance, which was right here in S4. That's where we left off, and enter. And it's going to close it up for us. And we've done it again. We have done it again. And then we'll drag it on down. Let's drag it on down. So there we go. So now let's bring up the ending balance for 4. Let's put that into our table. So now we're on year 3 information. Info year 3. It's already been banded. So we're going to say this is going to be equal to the payment up top. The payment of the 1180. F4 on the keyboard. $ before the R and 5. Let's copy that on down. Putting our cursor on it and just double clicking on Phil's handle. Phil's handle is more like a button in that case. You just double click on it. You don't have to drag it down. It's easier. You don't need the gloves for that. And then we're going to delete the rate over here. Delete the rate, and we'll pick up the rate, which is 14% now. 14%. We're going to say F4 on the keyboard, enter, put our cursor back on that, and double click the Phil handle button. Double click, and then if we could check it going all the way down, it should be back on down to 0 if everything has commenced forward as has been expected and projected. It is indeed doing what we thought it was going to do. The very thing that we planned to happen has taken place. How ironic. So we're going to then say that at the end of 3 years, here's our ending balance at the end of 3 years, entering that, and then it's going to populate the next one, automatically calculating that. But we want to practice it, so I'm going to delete it and calculate it again. We're getting good at this now. I can do this real fast. We're going to say negative PMT, shift 9, rate 16% divided by 12 for the monthly rate, comma, brackets, 30. Over here, thinking about years first, it's outside of the table, so we select F4 on the keyboard, $sign before the L and the 5, minus the 4, which is on the left-hand side, so I can copy it down, then plus 1, because we really only wanted a minus 3 out, and then close up the brackets, and then we're going to multiply it times 12 to get to the months instead of years, and then comma, the prior balance, which you can't quite see, but it's right there in S5. This time I'm going to close up the brackets so it doesn't like give me a little thing that close it up for me, like a little error thing or whatever it gives me. There's the 133,608. Let's put that on in period 4 down here. Let's apply that out to our table. Am I in period 4? Yeah, period 4. So here we are. We're going to change this payment then. That payment needs to change now. Things are going to change around here. That's going to now be that 16%. And then we're going to say F4 on the keyboard and enter. Put our cursor. Hold on a second. That's not right. You changed it wrong. You changed it wrong. You made it worse. Okay, so we want the year 4 payment item. That's the one we want. Then we're going to select F4 on the keyboard. $sign before the R and the 6. It should be R6. And that's going to give us our 1336 about. It's rounded. Putting our cursor on the fill handle button. Double clicking on it. And there we go. Now let's change the rate because that's going to change too. Let's see if we can change it correctly this time. Correct changing. Changing stuff just to change stuff if you're doing it wrong isn't helpful. Some people like to just change stuff without like making it better. That's going to be Q6. And we're going to say F4 on the keyboard and enter. Putting our cursor back on that one, double clicking on the fill handle button. And then let's check it out all the way down and see if it does what it's supposed to do. Does it do what it's supposed to do, making it go back down to 0 down below? 0. The check has been checked, and things are in accordance with the way they should be. So then we're going to say the ending balance according to our amortization table is going to be down here. Ending balance 98,598. Enter. That then, if I was to copy this down, it would populate the last one, right? It would populate the last one right there, like so. But we're going to calculate it one more time. Last time to practice. This is the last time. I know this is a fun process, so enjoy the last one we got. It's going to be PMT, shift 9, rate 12% divided by 12 for the monthly rate, comma, brackets, years first, looking at the 30 years on the left. That's outside of our table, so we're going to F4 on the keyboard, $sign before the L and the 5, minus. We're then taking the 5 on the left-hand side and then adding 1 to it because we really wanted 4, but I want to be able to copy it down if I was to copy anything down, even though there's not anything down there to copy anymore because we're on the last one. But then brackets, and then we're going to multiply that times 12 to get to the months, and then comma, the present value is going to be the loan right there. It's in S6, and then enter, and it's going to close up the brackets. The recalculation has taken place. Let's do this one more time. Year 5, updating the amortization table. The table of amortizing. This is the table of amortize. So then we're going to be down here in the year 5 cell. This is going to be equal to, let's see if we can change it properly the first time this time. Do it right the first time. It's confusing people. So now we're in R7. I'm going to say F4 on the keyboard, $sign before the R and 7. Enter. Put our cursor back on it, double click on it, bringing it down, all the way down to the bottom of the amortization table. And it's a long table. It's going all the way down. Then we're going to delete the interest rate. Pick up the interest rate over here at the 12% now. We're looking 12%. That also needs to be absolute. F4 keyboard, $sign before the Q and 7. Enter. Put our cursor back on it. Double click Mr. Phil's handle. He's a doctor. The Phil handle. Dr. Phil handle. I don't know what I'm talking. And scrolling down. Anyways, we're back to zero. We're back to zero. There it is again. We have once again completed the task that we had set out to complete. So now we're going to say that this is going to be equal to, in year 5, at the end of year 5, we got that 98,110, and there we have it. So notice you can construct these things kind of as you go. Let's just copy it down one more time so we could see these ending balances now populate. If I was to delete this, then we've got that first one that we calculated with the payment. Our ending balances are not correct because our table is now not correct, because our table is pulling from this table, or amortization table is pulling from our data set table. And then when I copy this down, it'll populate the ending balances properly. That will also be the case if you were to use the ending balances with a formula, which we'll talk about next time. If we just autofill that down, grabbing Phil's handle and dragging it down, there it is. I think Phil is a doctor. Dr. Phil? Doctor, that sounds familiar, but anyways. So then we got the ending balances are in place. So next time, we're going to calculate the ending balances with more of a complex formula, not depending on the table, but doing it independent from the table. Then we can use the table for a double check.